Inside the Birds is back. What's up, everybody? It's Geoff, Mosher, Adam Caplan. Got a great podcast lined up here for you as we move on from the NFL draft. We've got some undrafted free agent signings. Now, we're not going to go through every single one yet because they have not been made official. We're going to go through the ones that we can confirm. And then, as we do every year, Adam, right? Once you get the names in of the draft picks and the undrafted rookies, we got to start looking at the new depth chart, all the changes now, how they impact the team and what it's looking like going into OTAs and really rookie minicamp, which I believe starts today.
Yeah.
With the Eagles.
Yeah. The rookie minicamp's the first weekend after the draft.
Yep.
It's the following weekend. Yeah, it's right here. We're going to go inside this roster. We love doing this because you start to get an idea, because I know people will always ask us, and it's a great question, who are some of the UDFAs that could potentially make it? Like Blankenship was the guy we talked about last year after the draft. Keep an eye on him. We didn't guarantee he was going to make it. We just said, here's a guy they really like. He could push maybe for the fourth safety spot. We had no idea he'd dominate like he did in training camp, where kind of like obvious after the first week of training camp, he pretty much locked down a spot. So we'll be looking for that for sure. And there's certainly opportunity at a couple spots on the roster.
Yeah, certainly some opportunity at a couple of spots. But as the Eagles have sort of improved, making the Super Bowl, really adding to the roster. I mean, I remember 3 or 4 years ago, we had a couple of guys. TJ Edwards was one. He did make it. There was probably an offensive lineman, maybe even a safety that we thought, or a corner that had a good chance to make the team and did. I think as we start to go forward here, and especially this year, it might be pretty difficult to be a rookie free agent to make this team. I'm not putting it out. There's one in particular that we're going to talk about that I think has the best shot. But after that, it might be more difficult because, hey, the Eagles have put together a very deep roster once again.
So the guys that Josh Adams made as an undrafted free agent, might remember him as a running back.
I remember Geoff, Notre Dame, yeah.
Right, and that's when they had 5 backs, Sproles, Ajayi, and this guy, they would not have won a Super Bowl without him, Corey Clement, which is nothing. I don't know that any undrafted free agent could beat that, particularly since we've been doing this show.
Right.
That was an unbelievable story, and the aforementioned Josh Adams. And Destiny Vallejo, I know he was on the Super Bowl team, but did he make the roster?
Coming out of camp, I don't think he did, but I could be wrong. I'd have to go back and look at that one. I thought they did, though, have a DT in the last 4 or 5 years that made it as an undrafted free agent. I just can't remember which one that it was. I don't think he was the one. I think there was somebody else whose name is escaping me. TJ made it. Did Josh Jobe make it last year?
Yes.
He did, yep. Jobe made it last year. Marcus Epps, well, he wasn't.
He was claimed.
He was a guy who was claimed off waivers, right? But he was one for the Vikings. And a couple of offensive linemen, right? Like, was Awosika? Coyote Awosika? Wasn't he a guy who made
I think didn't they sign him off the Eagles practice squad?
That's right. He didn't make the 53. I think it was one of those things where he might have made the original 53, then immediately got sort of didn't really make it because then he might have gotten replaced after the waiver cut down and then practice squad. Then he wound up eventually on the 53.
Oh, well, unfortunately, he had the off the field issue, but Josh Sills made it.
Last year, Josh Sills. That's right. So last year it was Jobe, Sills. I think those were the only two, if I'm not mistaken.
Anyone? I'm just looking. Right. TJ Edwards, what a story he was in 2019. The Eagles have a history. Suapeta, did he make it as a rookie? Or was he cut them?
No, I don't think he did. I think he eventually made his way out to the 53.
Yeah. Oh, Herbie did.
I made Herbig. I forgot about that one. That was a good one too. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Sure.
All right. Well, if you're looking for a great breakdown of the Eagles 7 draft picks and, of course, the DeAndre Swift trade, the intel with Greg Cosell was up on Wednesday morning on our podcast and our YouTube platforms, and it was on fire, man. A lot of people caught it. A lot of people liked Greg's breakdowns. I think some people had struggled with some of his, not criticisms, but some of the things that he was concerned about. But, I mean, it's just an evaluation based on tape. I wouldn't. In nowhere did Greg say any of these picks were bad picks or wouldn't work out. He was, if you say a guy is small for his size and concerns are maybe covering a tall tight end, well, that's just true. It doesn't mean it can't be done. It just means that's how what teams would see. They would see concerns there. And also make sure you check out on InsideTheBirds.com our analytics breakdown done by Sam Finkel on DeAndre Swift. He did a really analytical deep dive into DeAndre Swift's efficiency as a running back in Detroit. You could say fairly that Swift may not have lived up to expectations in Detroit. He was injured a lot. He didn't have like a 12 touchdown rushing yard type season, but his usage always varied because they had Jamal Williams. And what the data shows in Sam's story is that he gave a lot of production for a guy who wasn't used as much as most quote unquote feature backs. Yeah, so now good reason to think here in Philadelphia, even though he might still be part of a rotation, that behind that offensive line in this schemed running game, that he could see some really, really big numbers in this last year of his contract. Did you get a chance to check it out, Adam? The whole analytical breakdown?
Yeah, that's why I wanted it in our show rundown. It's really great stuff. Sam's done a great job for us. The analytical data is really good. It just gives you, see, the thing about Swift is, and you just talked about his injury history. Yes, he's missed 10 games, but over 3 years, that's certainly not good. But when he plays, when he's not dealing with, like, he unfortunately had a lingering ankle injury last year. He's also had shoulder problems. But when he's not like nursing anything, he's incredibly productive.
Yes.
And the fact that they only gave up a 2025 fourth, the fact that Lions, I get the guys on the Fine Avers deal, but think about it. If he does well this year, I know they swap seventh, but who cares? But the big one is the fourth round for 2025. Let's say he does well, where the Eagles actually want to bring him back on a one-year deal. Just think about it. He could actually play 2 years with them, potentially, and they still have not given up anything, really.
That's amazing.
Think about that. I mean, it definitely could happen. I'm not saying the odds are against it based on the way the Eagles do things at running back, but look, the Eagles don't like walking away from guys who produce. It just, they didn't want to pay Sanders what Sanders thought he was worth. So, I mean, Swift is underachieved anyway. I mean, he's a pretty gifted kid. He's small, smaller than you'd like, but he's compact, and he's got great feet, shifty as hell. The Eagles saw that week 1 last year, so we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I liked Greg's breakdown of not just DeAndre Swift's skill set, but by the way, he compared DeAndre Swift to 2 really good running backs in the NFL, but also how that dynamic will be new for the Eagles offense, because they, Miles Sanders really wasn't catching a whole lot of passes under this administration. Right. His hands at times were shaky earlier in his career. He just wasn't involved in the passing game. But DeAndre Swift, it's almost sort of negligent to not use him as part of the passing game, because he's a good catcher of the football and can add to that element there. And something we'll kind of get into as the offseason progresses and we get into next season is, how will this Eagles offense evolve? Because you can't just run the same offense. Teams, they're the hunted now. Teams are going to be trying to do things differently against them. They will have to evolve a little bit offensively. So that's
the area. The one area where I was kind of disappointed with their offense, and it was hard to be disappointed in any of it because it was great, but the lack of consistent usage with the backs last season. We know Gamewell came on late season, maybe because they were down on him to start the season. He had a disappointing preseason, but you'd like to see a little bit more consistency. I get it. Guys like Hurts and others, like, they can throw the ball downfield. They don't want to check the ball down much. So, but it's not about the checkdowns. It's more design pass plays. And Swift does that really, really well.
Absolutely. All right. He also had his conference call with the Eagles media this past week. We have some coverage of that on InsideTheBirds.com. Needless to say, he was sort of blindsided by the Lions draft pick of Jahmyr Gibbs and then his subsequent being traded to the Eagles. He did not see that coming, but he was absolutely thrilled, as you would imagine, to be part of the Georgia fraternity, and that is now gathering in South Philadelphia, and just be a part of this team and the offensive line.
Do I have it right? 5 defense, 1 offense. And Swift, I don't think he played with any of these guys, right?
Did Swift play? No, he might not have, because he's been in the league for 3 years now. And the oldest guy they have from Georgia is, let's see, Jordan Davis. So maybe, I don't know. I would think not so.
Oh, Jordan Davis is 23. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, Jordan Davis is a little bit older. So they may have been some, like, he was just
crossover
leaving. DeAndre Swift might have been just leaving while Jordan Davis was getting there.
So this is interesting, because people had already asked me about fantasy for Swift and Rashad Penny. Ironically, both have big injury histories. Penny's is even worse. But Penny's a home run hitter. He's the one guy who could take long any toss sweep or any toss right or toss left. Where Swift is so good in the pass game. It's a tough call, man, for fantasy. I don't know. Where would you go for fantasy here with these guys?
As far as Swift or like where would I
PPR.
draft Swift?
Yeah, PPR. Swift or I'd probably lean towards Swift because of the catching, but
yeah, I'd probably catch him in round 2. I would. I wouldn't be afraid.
Whoa, that early?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
no, I
thinking
think
way down the line. Way down the line.
No, I think he's gonna have because even on not huge numbers, I think he's gonna have a lot of big production. I think he's gonna
I'm thinking like 5th or 6th round. I got to see the early dress, but
yeah.
The one thing I do like is that these backs on final year of their deals, they all of a sudden, like Josh Jacobs was like the all-timer. Guy's always hurt. Last year had some nagging injuries, didn't miss a game. All of a sudden, he's playing for a new deal. Saquon Barkley stayed relatively healthy. There are other examples of this. So maybe Swift can stay on the field.
We'll see. Real quick fantasy question that I've been meaning to ask you for a couple of days now. Has nothing to do with the Eagles, but where would you take Anthony Richardson?
Oh, in a dynasty league. They have decent pass start group, not great. Steichen, great play caller. He'll do a good job with them. I'd want him. See, again, you in a redraft, he's going to play this year. I don't know if he'll start other games, but he's not a guy that I probably would draft. He would be in the back end of my draft in a redraft.
Really?
That means because
I think
he is a rookie.
I think he's going to be like Jalen Hurts 2 years ago. I think he's going to be a top 10 fantasy player.
I don't know yet. I need, in fact, gosh, now you mentioned this, I might go to the training camp just to see how advanced he is. Like what I better word would be how far away he is from being ready to go. But from what I've heard from teams, he actually tested pretty well for a guy who'd only started 1 year. The testing that they gave him, a couple teams told me, was actually better than they expected.
Are you talking about athletic testing or
no?
Like brain?
Yeah.
I was going to say athletic testing. He's phenomenal.
No, ridiculous, but but they're not doing that. I'm talking about the going up to the chalkboard and just certain things because you couldn't always tell by the tape, but if you just what they asked him to do, they were like, okay, good, we can work with something because typically Trubisky went through the same thing. He wasn't ready to play.
Right.
When you've only started 1 year, you've got some stuff going against you.
I could be wrong, but I think he's going to wind up rushing for double-digit touchdowns. I think he's going to throw for 15 to 20. I think he's going to probably put together, at least 3,000 yards somehow. I mean, by the end of the year, I think he's going to be a top 5 player. And so I wouldn't even. Okay. I consider him drafting very early in the first round. Especially in a dynasty league.
In a dynasty league, yeah.
By the way, him and Jonathan Taylor in the same backfield is going to be a problem.
Oh, I know.
It's going to be a real problem for defenses.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get into. Let's remind everybody that Inside the Birds is powered by our friends at Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. It's the exclusive Jersey Shore resort of Inside the Birds. We want to welcome our latest Patreon subscribers, Tony, Chris, Lee, Richard. We thank you so much for your patronage. Remember, if you want to be involved, if you're not yet, it's patreon.com/insidethebirds. Adam does his Wednesday night Discord chat. That's always been a special feature. 2 podcasts a month, and then we're going to add a little bit more interactive stuff. We're going to start doing little videos where we answer questions for our Patreon subscribers who can't make the Ask ITB live streams, or even if they want to double up. So we're just trying to get as much as we can in for our great Patreon subscribers, and we thank them for their patronage. Let's get into the podcast here. So the Eagles have. We'll go through some of the names we can confirm from the rookie free agent class. Who anyone jump out at you right away, Adam?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, because you laughed when I brought this up. So Joe Nada is a receiver from Clemson, and I did notice on the list that we have, a lot of these kids are tall, whether it's a corner or receiver. So Joe Nada is a big possession receiver out of Clemson.
Mm-hmm.
And now this guy ran better many moons ago, but Afani Moma, I'm just bringing him up. I know people are going to laugh, but this guy stayed in the league a long time. He actually made a lot of money before I think an ACL ended his career with the Cardinals. But this was a guy that Chip Kelly wanted. Chip was very big on measurables, and he had the measurables. Remember, he was a receiver who converted tight end. Does that sound right? I think
Moma was a receiver who converted to tight end. Yeah.
And he was tall out of UMass, and
Mm-hmm.
they loved the pro day, and they just loved everything about him. And he didn't quite develop here, but he did develop with the Cardinals, and he made some money. So I'm not saying they're going to move him to tight end, but the Eagles, if you look at the back end of the receiver group, there's room here. Now this is a position,
Mm-hmm.
depending on how he does in training camp. And we'll other than he's not fast. We'll learn soon why he wasn't drafted, but he was at the combine. He did work out. After Brown, Smith, Zacchaeus, and Quez Watkins, there's room here for someone to push. Now, we know Covey will most likely again be the punt returner. He got better as the season went along. Greg Ward, you're number 6 with the Eagles. How's this happen? You're number 6. He's still there. He's only a slot. There. Yep. Mm-hmm. Jadon Hasselwood we'll get to in a second, but Nada's got a chance here. If he could blow it up, who's to say he can't make the roster? There's an opportunity here for a back end receiver. There's no question.
Yeah, I guess the issue is that he's not a lightning quick wide receiver, right? So
possession.
Usually your back end guys are going to be special teams guys, are going to be returners, just like Britton Covey making it last year. So I don't know who. I just off the top of my head, knowing what his skill set is and what he's done at Clemson, good player, but sort of maybe push to me in my mind more push to be on the practice squad and then maybe come up if you're just not getting something out of Zacchaeus or Quez Watkins continues to regress. I'd sort of be surprised if he's able to push his way. I mean, we'll do a 53 soon, but I mean, a guy like this, I think would have to be more of a electrifying return guy. And don't forget they have Devin Allen, by the way.
Sure. Right? Who hasn't done anything yet. And they're trying to make him, they're trying to, other than being kick returner, they're trying to help him become a receiver, but not a 6'3 and 1/8.
Right.
33 and an 1/8 arms, which is pretty good for a receiver.
Mm-hmm.
10 and a quarter hands, which is very good. 4.54 for a guy as big as he had. 4.54 40 is not too bad. 10-yard split was 1.59. Vert was 34 and a half. Broad jump was 10.4. Mm-hmm. He's got length. I mean, look, that gives you something, because remember, AJ Brown, he looks 6'2", but he's actually under 6'1". He's about 6 feet 3/4 of an inch.
Right.
Smith is not tall. Zacchaeus is not tall at all. Quez is 6 foot even. Mm-hmm. There's absolutely a room for a jumbo receiver like this.
It makes sense.
Like you said, he doesn't run that well, but there's an opportunity here on the back of the roster.
All right, Jadon Hasselwood out of Arkansas.
Jadon Hasselwood, yeah. So he's another
great name, by the way. I love that name.
Hasselwood.
Jadon Hasselwood.
So let me get his numbers out here. Someone told me about him. He runs a little better than you think.
I was going to say, I think he runs a little better than Nada, obviously.
Well, here's what happened.
Go ahead.
He does, but he did at the combine terrible.
Right.
He was undrafted 4.66. But I was told he runs much better than you think. But he's a jumbo. He's another big guy, 6'2", 6'2 and a quarter, 215. So he's got really good size. He did not run well at all. 4.66 is going to get you. No one's drafting a receiver at 4.66. You're just not getting drafted.
Right.
And no, but his vert was good. So there's some analytic data that is there, and that'll get you into training camp. So you make a great point about it. Like, if these guys want to make it, they got to make it on specials. They got to be able to get downfield.
Yeah.
But the Eagles obviously like something in his tape, and I know the Eagles are big on, for UDFAs, they look for certain analytical data, whatever they used. And some of these guys each year make it, or they're brought to camp because of that data.
Yeah, absolutely. And although this one may sound like they were relying more on their tape and what they have for his play speed as opposed to what he tested at, because that obviously in the postseason testing wasn't as good as what they saw.
Right, exactly. The 40 was not good, but there's got to be his vert was good. 37 was good for a guy who's heavy as he is at 6'2 and a quarter.
Right,
he's well built.
Yeah,
but you know what I like is that he ran a slow 40, and they weren't like some teams dismiss a guy. If you run 4.6 or worse, you're not coming to our camp. Give them credit. They obviously, this goes to kind of what you're saying. They found something that is not everything's going to be based on analytics. Some of it is like it's rare for them to bring someone in who wasn't drafted that didn't hit some benchmark. So he hit something, but as you said, he didn't run well, but they still brought him in. There's no doubt. So it's good.
All right. So the next guy we'll talk about is a clear example of why we wait and don't address this stuff immediately because there's just so much out there in the waning seconds after the draft of who's signing where. But tight end Brady Russell from Colorado was actually going to sign with a different team, we had heard. And then the Eagles were also, we had heard, targeting a different tight end. But here's the dominoes that fell. That other tight end the Eagles were looking at wound up signing elsewhere. So they needed a tight end. And then Brady Russell, who happens to be the nephew of Eagles front office exec Matt Russell, senior executive, then went and decided to sign with the Eagles. And that's just exactly, multiply that by about 300. And that's what you get out of the entire NFL with the scramble for rookie free agent signings.
This is a crazy story. So there's a good article in one of the Colorado papers.
Mm-hmm.
He agrees to a deal. Again, these guys don't sign until the next day, or sometimes they don't sign until they get in for the rookie camp Thursday or Friday. So he verbally agrees. He said 5 minutes later, the Eagles call 5 minutes. And agents hate doing this because they know that they're going to get yelled at. The agent told, because the Eagles came in with a better offer, and they had to back out. The player and the agent had to back out. It's never good that you do that. Now, the worst this is the worst, when a club backs out because sometimes they run out of money. It didn't happen in this case, but it happens all the time. Like their allotment, they run out of it, and they have to call the agent back, say, hey, sorry, man, we can't do it. And unfortunately, the agent's already told the player. And it's not good for the agent and player relationship, and it's really bad sometimes for the agent and club because they yell at each other. I mean, I know a prominent agent who was very close with the GM, and it ruined their relationship. They didn't talk for a couple of years because the club backed out. They ran out of money, and the GM had nothing to do with it, but he yelled at the GM. He goes, "How could you guys do this to my guy? I already told him this is unprofessional." This is almost $1 trillion business, the NFL, right? But yet they do something so archaic like this free agent frenzy, the UDFA class right after the draft, and they're usually done within 90 minutes. They're all signed,
right?
Or all agreements. Excuse me, they have all verbal agreements. To do something this archaic, why don't they have an online draft? I mean,
I don't know. It reminds me of scenes that you'll often see in movies out of Wall Street, like at like right before the bell.
Yeah.
You got brokers like waving things
with the tape everywhere.
They're fighting over it at some point. It's like
it's not good.
It's like crazy stuff. It's like, can't there be a more civilized way of handling all this?
Mean, the GMs try not to get involved. The personnel director, the scouting director, the scouts all do it. The contract, the cap guys, contract negotiators. It's really embarrassing. And it's a shame because it does hurt relationships. And some agents, like if it's like really even between two teams, it's what he has a better relationship with.
Mm-hmm.
Because if a club burned them, they don't forget that stuff.
That's right. All right. So Brady Russell, again, nephew of Matt Russell, the Eagles senior assistant. I don't know if this is like one of the great analytics signings, right? I mean, he was a productive tight end, if I'm not mistaken, at Colorado, but I didn't remember exactly what he did from a testing standpoint.
He was at the Senior Bowl, if I recall correctly.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a bad college tight end. We need to find out if he can block.
Yeah,
because he's not making this team unless he can block. Because they got enough guys who can catch the football. And Cal Patera, we know that's why he was drafted because he's a superior athlete.
Right.
Stoll's a really good blocker, and remember Tyree Jackson's totally healthy now. He's not rehabbing anything.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, this kid I do not believe was I'm not seeing on the combine list. So we'll learn more about him. But yeah, what a story! Wow.
Yeah, I mean, he did run a 4.75 40, which that's not terrible for what, 255 pounds. He's a bigger guy. He's 252 pounds.
Was that the pro day?
I believe that was at his pro
day.
Yeah. So yeah, and I don't the Colorado offense, man. I'm not sure if he was. Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm not sure. Sometimes guys get buried. Sometimes there are some really good players, but they don't play with a good quarterback or play on a bad offensive line. You don't get a really good feel for them.
Sure.
But interesting signing. We'll see. I think it's very difficult for a tight end to make this team, like you said, unless they block. But even if so, I mean, the Eagles have some pretty good talent here to begin with. So we'll just have to see. As a senior, by the way, 25 catches for 307 yards. He didn't have any TDs. He did have a very high QB rating when targeted. In his past pro stats are that he gave up 3 pressures. But again, how much in how many attempts I would have to know. To be make a really that was his senior year. He was a 5th year senior. So this past year he had 20 catches for 153.
And he's a former walk-on, if I'm not mistaken. So it's a nice story. and team
Yeah.
captain. So yeah, the Eagles are big, super big on the team captain thing. I remember one team telling me they didn't have the exact stat, but the Eagles were right up there with former team captains. By the way, teams look at this stuff. They compare how they stand with certain stuff, certain things. Maybe it could be they could look at grade point average, whatever the case would be. In this case, it's team captains, and the Eagles have had a bunch of these guys over the years.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing that jumps out, he's got really, really big hands for a tight end.
Oh, okay.
So, all right. I think he tested him like high in the. I'm looking to see if I can 34 and 4/8 inch hands.
How big? Wait, you mean arms? You mean long?
No. It's hands. 34 and 4/8.
That would be 34 would be arm length.
Why does it say hands here? I'm looking.
Definitely.
That would make sense. That sounds
34
more
would be
like,
arm length.
yeah, it had to be. Maybe that's what it is. It says hands.
Couldn't have bigger than 10, 11 hands. 11 hands.
Right.
The biggest hands in NFL history.
That would be now that I'm saying it to myself, remembering that the quarterbacks who have like
would actually be 3 yards. Yeah, that would be like 3 yards. Oh wow, 30 for that.
You can literally throw anything at this guy. Don't you?
Right, exactly. Right. You wouldn't have to move. Be like Will. But wait, wow, those are really super long arms though. Over 34. Jeez, he's only like 6 change. Okay.
Yeah. So you'd have to think he's pretty decent blocker with arms. Like he better be.
We'll find out. And then they got some. Do we have? Oh, the Trevor Reed kid from Louisville is a tackle. Now he may play guard. We because of the height. And then defensively, now this kid who we're going to talk about from Michigan State's a big time tackler, Ben Summerin.
Yeah, really quick though on Trevor Reed out of Louisville.
Okay.
I'm told that his athleticism really stood out. He's a guy that they're gonna have to coach up and really kind of get with the program. But from an athletic standpoint, that's really kind of what jumps out at him. I don't think he's played a ton of either football or a ton of O-line. He might have been one of those late movers.
Okay.
But the athleticism really jumped out there with him.
Well, that would make sense from a measurable standpoint to get a guy in a camp because he could hit some of that. This is what Rick Spielman told us on a show a year ago. Mm-hmm. Is that's how they got Adam Thielen. It was strictly, he said, analytics nailed it. They which is comical because he was in their backyard, but still he wasn't even drafted. How was he not drafted? Unbelievable. And then so Reed's a guy we'll look at.
By the way, I said athletic. I mean, he ran a 5.01 40, and the guy weighs
not bad for
he weighs 297 pounds.
So he's smaller. Okay.
Yeah,
we'll see because he's not super long, so we'll see where they line him up. And then the linebacker Van Summerin is a big time tackler out of Michigan State. Hey, look, TJ Edwards, as you said earlier, this is a guy you don't want to ignore that.
Mm-hmm.
He's a guy absolutely could push because they're stacked linebackers. They're not great there, and he's 6'3", 230, 235, which I don't know if he's 6'3". He might be 6'2.5" because they round off. But started a lot of games. Really good football player in terms of what you ask because he's a tackler. He's not a pass rusher.
Right.
And then Eli Ricks from Alabama.
Yeah, I just want to add on Van Summerin. I'm told he runs really well. It's just for a linebacker's instincts.
Yeah.
Need work and refinement though. I mean, when I say really well, he's a coverage. He's a run. Yeah, he can tackle, run, tackle.
Yeah.
Right. But he has to work on his instincts. Go ahead.
What do you know about Eli Ricks from Alabama?
Eli Ricks is. I mean, did we talk about him with Greg Cosell on that last episode? Okay, I forget who we were talking about it with. I mean, this is a kid who was once an extraordinarily high recruit. I mean, top star recruit. And didn't he start off at LSU, if I'm not mistaken?
I think so. That was that. Now if it's the guy you're talking about, we did talk about someone transferring. Okay.
Yeah. Either way, I mean, really good athlete. Came out of high school. Really, known for it was a 5-star recruit. He signed with LSU. Did not make it there, or whatever happened. He wound up transferring to Alabama. I'm told he's a great athlete. A player can be very productive. He's got to grow up is basically how it was told to me. I mean, he probably should have been a better college player based on how high of a recruit he was. And then obviously you went from LSU and then you go to Alabama. But he certainly has skills. There's no question about that.
And he is tall, 6'2" even, 188, arm length, really good, 32 3/8.
Mm-hmm.
He's got the ideal size. Now his hands aren't very big; they're smaller than 9, which is kind of small for a guy's size. But he's long. It'll be harder this year to make it because the room is kind of crowded with Slay, Bradbury, Maddox, Josiah Scott, Ringo, McPherson. Mario Goodrich is back. And they got we'll talk defense. We'll talk more defense on Sunday show, or Monday show. But look, the Bama program, the Eagles are rated that program and the SEC. So all of a sudden, last couple of years, they're on these schools.
Yeah, we may have been having just a conversation with Greg in general, but on there, off there, just about some of these taller corners, these 6'2", 180 to 195, sometimes 200-pound corners who test very well athletically, but because they're taller and bigger, they don't have as much twitch, like the ability to change direction, especially on in-breaking routes or quick out-breaking routes. I think he was even talking about Ringo in that regard, because Ringo was also a top level recruit coming out of Scottsdale, probably someone that everybody said one day is going to be a first round pick in the NFL, but the tape showed that he struggles at times when receivers can get him off his spot or get into his hip and then break.
So what Bill Polian said was that when he studied Seattle's defense, he said, yes, they're great players like Richard Sherman, but the taller you are, and he was 6'3" or 6'4", Sherman, the taller you are, the harder it is to flip your hips and turn.
Right. Naturally.
Right. And although Sherman was a former receiver at Stanford, but it does. The longer your legs are, the more sort of high hip you are, the harder it is for you to turn. So you worry about that. And Greg said, I think Cosell said, didn't he say that Ringo had problems throttling down and slowing down?
Yeah, he was basically saying that if you run like at him, run your vertical still at him, but you're the type of receiver who can, do that little jitterbug, footwork, and then bam, break to the inside. You can probably get him turned inside out because he just doesn't have that great change of direction and fluidity that sometimes you see with guys who are 5'8", 5'9", because they have a lower center of gravity, right? They're used to that. They probably ran like that too when they were younger and played that same position. So
right. One more. Ty Zentner's a punter, UDFA, out of Kansas State. They targeted him to come in and compete.
Absolutely.
So this is definitely a battle. Like they got to get this punter thing. We don't talk about it enough.
Right.
Boy, what a disaster the punting situation was last season. Let's call it like it is. It just did not work. Suppose was not as good as they had hoped. And Brett Kern, that I don't blame him for. Who the hell knew he would have lost it? He just couldn't. He was done. He just didn't have it.
Right.
So we'll see.
You're 100% right. I think it's important to say, like, this. Some rookie free agent signings are darts, or they're camp body signings or depth signings. This is not. This Tyler Zentner is a kid who is coming in here. Zentner, and I imagine that the Eagles really want him to see him seize the job, because they would like to upgrade over Aaron Sipos. So he will be given every opportunity to. Now, if he does, Adam, then you sort of worry about, well, now I'm going into an NFL season trying to win a Super Bowl with a rookie punter, but I think that's been done before. It's not like trying to win with a rookie quarterback or anything.
Yeah, I mean, look, the kid Stonehouse who beat out Kern was unbelievable. Ryan Stonehouse was an undrafted free agent out of Colorado State. It was like the competition was over like by mid-August. He was amazing. So yeah, they got to get this right. I mean, it's really amazing. Since this group took over, they fixed. They got Jake Elliott fixed. He really was struggling before this staff. They got him fixed for sure. The return game has obviously been disappointing. They haven't been able to find that guy, though. Boston Scott was kind of a nice find. He's okay. He's adequate, but not good enough. You hope he'll be better, or maybe they'll find someone on the roster. But the big one is fun. Like, they have to get them.
100%. Your team's good when you're like, oh, the big free agent signing here is the punter, right? I mean, that's how you know you're good. All right, it's Ocean Casino Resort's 5th birthday this summer. They can't wait to celebrate with you. Join Ocean for exciting promotions and sweepstakes, headline entertainment, the best day life and nightlife lineup in AC, the debut of the birthday bar, exclusive local collabs and partnerships, commemorative 5th birthday merchandise, and so much more. Don't miss stunning fireworks and unique events all summer long. Ocean Rewards members will enjoy over $5 million in gifts and prizes. So be sure to sign up for an Ocean Rewards card to get in on the fun next time you visit Ocean Casino Resort in Atlantic City. All right, let's get to sort of now our new look. We're going to do offensive depth chart for the rest of this podcast. And then the next one, the one that will come out on Monday morning.
Yeah.
We will do the defensive side.
Let's go inside. Let's do it. What do you got?
Yeah. So, man, this quarterback depth chart, Adam, I don't know how it's going to shake out in the end. I'm going to go on a limb and say that Jalen Hurts will be the starting quarterback. That's just me.
You nailed that. If they didn't guarantee $5 million to Mariota, it would have been interesting to see if Booker McKee could actually push him.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what they love to find is if Booker McKee could be the future number 2 quarterback in backup Hurts. That would be nice if one of them had a great preseason. In fact, we know they're going to keep 2 quarterbacks. It's unlikely they keep 3, but it would be nice if one of the 2 of them, the tape was so good in the preseason over those 3 games that they don't want to risk cutting the guy. That'd be the upside.
Now, they did keep 3 for most of last year, did they not? They just made Ian Book inactive, I think, on game day.
Yes, correct. Yeah. No, you're right. Yeah, you're right. But it's going to be because I think the roster is a little deeper because some of the acquisitions and free agency or the re-signs, excuse me, and the draft where they hit, their D tackle room is interesting. Their D line group is great. Like it's not like they knew they're going to draft Nolan Smith. So there's certain positions they may have to go heavier that they'd rather not do it, but they have to because you're not going to expose some of these players to waivers. And you're right. Ian Book was claimed off waivers. They kept him on the season. They kept him on the roster all season, but he just didn't. He might have dressed a couple times. I'd have to look back, but he never played.
Right. No, I think it's going to be fun to watch. Ian Book versus Tanner McKee, not only because, we're always excited about quarterback competitions, but you kind of got 2 totally different kind of guys here, right? Yeah, Ian Book can run around a little bit. He's athletic. Tanner McKee, he can boot, but he really is a pocket quarterback who wants to stand there and dissect that way. So it'll be a fun competition. But I don't suspect, just like you said, that anyone's going to push Marcus Mariota. Although, again, when they signed Mariota, I get it. Made sense. I know what his resume is. I'm not an idiot. We've all been watching football for the last 10, 15 years. But you can't convince me that too many quarterbacks had worse tape, starting quarterbacks, or even high-end backups than Mariota last year. So if this new environment thing doesn't work out, if he's really not that good, maybe a guy like Book, who's now been in the NFL for a couple of years and working on his game, we'll see. We'll see if he can make it somewhat of a competition. I don't know.
Well, the fact that they kept Booker the whole season, Book on the roster the entire season, didn't cut him, tells you they really like. We know he's really smart. You could help on the look team when they're going against Russell Wilson or whoever who can move, and then of course McKee can't move. That's the difference. But man, he's got an arm. He's an interesting prospect. So we'll see what happens there at quarterback in terms of could anyone push for a 3rd spot.
Right. All right, we'll move on to running back here, and this is about as deep of a running back room I think the Eagles have ever had. Now, I say that knowing that Trey Sermon has not proved anything in the NFL other than being a 3rd-round pick, but also we know that the coaches did like him. I mean, they thought he practiced hard. We saw him get 2 reps, and he did as much as you can do on 2 reps there, getting 17 yards. Yep. And before they put him back on the shelf and said, no, we don't want to show you and anybody else what else we might have.
I was just going to say, I was arguing with someone close to the situation about, because remember, we were trying to figure out who they're going to cut to activate whoever was off of IR. I can't remember who it was, but I was like, the guys only had 2 carries. Why don't you guys just cut him? You don't understand. He's looked really good, as you just said, about what the coaches are really high on him. They want to get him in the offseason program. I'm like, all right. But now as you move forward here, Swift offers something different.
Mm-hmm.
Penny is totally different from anyone they've had. I love the way you set this up. It's so diverse, this group. Gainwell, obviously, is 3rd down changeup. Sherman, who's a bigger back, he's got to play to that size, though. And you never know what his role is from game to game, other than he's a kickoff returner, Boston Scott. I'm not counting. Kenny Brooks is just a power back who just doesn't have much. But
now that's a camp body.
Kennedy Brooks. Totally. But look, they've kept 5 before. It's hard to do that. They're gonna have a numbers game here, man. Wait till we get the defense on Monday. I've already gone through that. They're going to have some challenges here because the roster, in ways, could be better. Well, certain things have to work out, but safety, okay, no Gardner Johnson, they're not as good. But if certain things work out, they might actually be deeper than they were at certain spots.
I wonder if they think that they can keep 4, Swift, Penny, Gainwell, and Sermon, and still be able to bring Boston Scott back on the practice squad. As long as the Giants don't claim him,
Uh well, he's not subject to waivers, but
Oh, well, I
that's the
mean,
better.
I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. So could they release him and then bring him back to the practice squad without somebody offering more money or a shot on their 53?
How the hell the Giants did not sign him? Seriously, I know it. I don't think you could say it's a fluke, all this craziness with the Giants. We've never seen anything like this. But for goodness sake, the guy plus he could kick off return now. They guaranteed him 1.1 million out of the 2 million. The Eagles did. His guarantee is not bad. They're essentially guaranteeing over half of his salary
Mm-hmm.
over the total money that they owe him. It doesn't mean they can't cut him. It's only 1.1 million, but he is the one sort of jack of all trades everybody loves. You make a good point because who can? I mean, it's not unprecedented. It's extremely rare for any team to keep five, but you could make a case if Sermon, now he's subject to waivers. If he kicks ass, you don't want to cut this guy.
I know. It's gonna be. Hey, listen, again, I know we said this about quarterback, but this will be really fun to watch as it shakes out during the preseason and training camp. All right, let's move on to wide receivers. Before we do that, we'll pause real quick for a word for some great sponsors. All right, wide receivers, Adam. I think we're pretty set on the top four, right? Three or four here. It's funny you talked about Greg Ward. Is this finally the year that that the Eagles don't have him back in some form or fashion? AJ Brown, Devontae Smith are your top two. Zacchaeus, Olamide, I think I pronounced that correct. Zacchaeus,
Olamide.
Olamide. Sorry, Olamide. You know what? his Twitter account is something like Llama Day, something like that, I think, or Llama Day.
I'm pretty
So
certain because I heard Wes Dorm, the voice of the Falcons, say it 50 times to the point of like, if I can't get this right, I can't get any of these names right.
right.
Olamide Zacchaeus.
So Olamide and Quez. I mean, Olamide sort of becomes this year's version of Zach Pascal. Not the same type of player, but
He's much smaller.
just veteran
Yep.
slot guy, though.
For sure.
So,
No,
yeah, those are your
important.
four. I guess the question is, who can push them? I mean, as some of the guys we've talked about.
It's a good question. Quez is a one speed guy, true speed guy. Covey is a punt returner. That's really his true value to the club.
Mm-hmm.
Not as the guy because he's a jumbo receiver. He's got really good size. They're in a spot here because they have so many defensive linemen. I mean, do you really want to keep 6 defensive tackles? No, that's like unheard of. But you can't. You can only keep 53. You can't keep everybody. You're going to have to go short some spots, and you can make a legitimate case to keep 4 tight ends, 4 running backs, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
God forbid one of the quarterbacks, Book or McKee, puts great tape in the preseason where you don't. These are good problems to have.
Yep.
But they have better depth right now.
So one thing I've been wondering lately is, in a weird way, is Boston Scott's fate tied to Devin Allen's development?
Oh,
We just talked about maybe
yes.
getting, if the team moved on from Boston Scott just so they only kept 4, is it because Devin Allen really turned into a good kick returner and they went one extra receiver there?
Well, it could because Allen didn't. They're part of their offseason for him is just to try to help him become a receiver because that you saw that straight line touchdown speed against Cleveland in the preseason. It's a great catch, great throw. You'd like to see more of that. So no, you make a good point. Maybe because you can't keep everybody.
Right. And then of course Tyree Cleveland was the sort of veteran free agent signing, kind of like last year's what was his name? Deion Kane, right?
Yes.
Guy who's played in the league, is done all right, has some flashes, and we'll see what happens with him. It's always hard for these guys though to make the team, Adam. No matter how good Deion Kane show, when you have the top 4 that the Eagles have, you have to be a special team standout usually to make it as a backup because there are so many adequate to good receivers in the league. They become fungible, and you think I don't need a roster spot. I can bring him him or someone else to my practice squad.
I agree. This is going to be fun when we do our final 53 or for at the end of the preseason. See what's like because obviously these stories are right there themselves in training camp about training camp standouts. And then because it's funny, we had heard Covey did very well in OTAs, and in the first couple weeks of training camp, it was like, oh boy, he may not actually make it. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
And then he just just got on there, and he got off to the slow start. But so that's receiver, running back, quarterback, tight end. It's Goddard, it's Stoll, it's Calcaterra. Now the question would be, Dalton Keene is a former overdrafted tight end for the Patriots who's been on the Eagles before. They cut him, then they brought him back. Tyree Jackson, as I said earlier, is not rehabbing anything. He's a guy that they really want to see more of.
Yeah.
I mean, he'd be much better for the practice squad, but he's also subject to waivers if they wind up cutting him.
Right.
And then you got Brady Russell.
Yeah. Well, I mean, really, for when we talk about tight ends in the 53, it's the first three, right? So there's Goddard, there's Stoll, and unless Tyree Jackson, do they keep four because they're really, really, want to have this big, huge 6'7" Tyree Jackson? Remember when they brought him in, 2 years ago, and he had the injuries. They even brought that last year. They were wanting to see him, but they didn't. Now that they have Grant Calcaterra with them, and Grant Calcaterra showed you he's got some juice to him. I don't know if they feel the same way about wanting to have Tyree Jackson for the long term. I don't know.
But the one thing he has, you just mentioned it, 6'7". He should be around 260 now. When they signed him, he was 247, 249. He should be somewhere around 260. And remember you and I saw him in Miami. We're like, holy smokes, did he put on mass?
He was huge in a good way.
Because in fact, I think we were like, wait, is that Tyree Jackson? That can't be him. It is.
Yeah. He looked like a defensive end.
He looked huge, right?
That's what he looked like.
That's what he offers. The one thing is mass at that position. And remember, he was a willing blocker. You make a great point, because this is where a guy, if he could pick up where he was before he got hurt, I know it's been a while, make it interesting. All these coaches really don't want to subject him to waivers.
Yeah. No, you know what, the whole having this kind of depth and unique depth, some interesting guys like Tyree Jackson, right, makes the training camps more fun now, because unlike when we first started covering the team and there were actual like starting job competitions at training camp, that ship is long sailed. So now we look forward to like the battle for the third string tight end, and some of these players are just unique and special enough that make it interesting. It's not like just two schlubs going at it there to see who can make.
By the way, the running back battle, the whole depth chart is open. There's no starter.
Yeah, no doubt
Great
about
point,
it,
man. I can't wait for that one. That'll be fun.
All right, we're going to go to the offensive line. First, I want to remind everybody to check out our friends at phlsportsnation.com, enhancing the fans' experience with their coverage of all Philadelphia sports teams. For the fan, by the fan is their motto. So make sure you check them out at phlsportsnation.com and on Twitter at phlsportsnation. Let's pause real quick to hear a word from our great friends, Sky Motor Cars.
Sky Motor Cars in Westchester is a different sort of dealership. All it takes is one look at their Highline pre-owned vehicles that people all over the country want and need. Owner Brett Schulter, make sure you don't spend a dime of your money before you purchase the car. Sky Motor Cars allows you to make all the decisions regarding your next vehicle. At Sky Motor Cars, you never have to spend more than necessary. Visit SkyMotorCars.com today or call 610-918-7225.
And if you stop into Sky Motor Cars out there in Westchester, PA, make sure you tell them Adam and Geoff sent you. You will get a great deal. So offensive line is not going to be a whole lot of guesswork here again at the starting spot, other than one spot. Center, Jason Kelsey. Obviously, Cam Jurgens is in the competition. Nick Sirianni has already acknowledged this at right guard, but if not, he's your number 2 center. And then your best, I know you love the name this most on the road, Tom Cameron, right?
Cam
That's
Tom.
your guy, Cam Tom. We'll see if he can sort of fight for a backup spot there.
He's got experience. He's been around the league a long time. They know him. They know that Saints roster. He was with them for a while. And then at guard, see, this is interesting. Because as you said, we know we know obviously Dickerson's the starter at one spot, left guard. That's sewn up. But the right guard spot between Steen, who's never played guard before, he's got to learn it.
Yep.
Cam Jurgens, who's still developmental guard. He needs to learn. He hasn't played offensive line very long. And Jack Driscoll, I don't know why people are counting him out. He's the one guy with experience.
You know what I find most fascinating about this right guard battle is that none of the three are really right guards.
I know. Driscoll's more of a right tackle. Good point. And then you've got deep backups like Suapeto's been with them since 2009 on and off the roster. Julian Good-Jones has been with them on and off since 2000. And Tyrese Robinson was with them last season.
Mm-hmm.
So Driscoll, to me, if he doesn't win, he'll be the swing tackle. They really could use another veteran tackle. They really could.
Yeah, I guess if you don't, I guess Fred Johnson is sort of up in the air. We'll get to him in a second.
Sure. So let's get to left tackle. Obviously, Mailata's a tackle.
Real quick, by the way, just to get back to Steen, because I'm glad you sort of mentioned this, because it was told to me, because I know when we did our draft recap, we're like, this guy should probably be considered the leader in the clubhouse for right guard, just because he was a good tackle at Alabama. But the fact that he's never played guard, that we shouldn't lose sight of that concept, because you have to learn that. And he's been playing on the left side for the last 2 or 3 years, so he has to switch sides and switch positions. So that's not something that's easy.
Here's what we're told: the technique is completely different.
Right.
The footwork obviously is, because it's different steps, but the technique on how because you're in a phone booth, you're in a tighter area, and you've got someone on the right and left of you, opposed to left tackle, where you're only worried about your guy to your right. You're the last man standing at left tackle, where now you're inside. So the thought process, it's a great point. We actually asked Greg about that on the show. And Greg will tell you, he always says, I'm not an O-line guru, but here's what I have.
There you go.
So left tackle is obviously Mailata, and they have to figure out who the swing tackles. And we know Driscoll can do it because he's done it before, but he's also not as long as you'd like.
Yeah.
Fred Johnson and Roderick Johnson could do it, although I'm told Roderick Johnson's probably better at right. Fred Johnson has played guard before. He's played right tackle. He's played left tackle. But I'd rather have someone with more experience who started, for a while, as maybe towards the back down of his career. Brett Toth, who will not go away, is also.
Brett Toth is the Matt Leo of Julian Vanderbilt, or Greg Ward's. I mean,
was it how many? Do we know how many times Vanderbilt was there? Like
too many to count. Too many to count. But all three of these guys, between Toth, Leo, and Greg Ward, they're all battling for the title now.
Good for Brett Toth to not give up, because with all the injuries.
100%.
And then right tackle is obviously behind Lane is Jack Driscoll, depending on what happens with him. Jared Williams is with him last year, and Trevor Reed, who will probably be cross-trained between right tackle and guard. And as you said, he's overall needs a lot of experience. But to me, this screams of one thing: they need a veteran backup. It's a guy who's got versatility, who can play multiple positions.
Yeah, I guess the only guy who in-house might satisfy that criteria, if he doesn't win the starting right guard job, would be Steen, because he's played left tackle. I know he shouldn't be a fixture there, but if Mailata gets hurt and you got to put somebody in for a half or a game or maybe even 2, I think he'd probably be, if he's not starting at right guard, that guy, because that's where all of his experience is, at tackle, and most of it is left tackle. So.
Yeah, so they're not. That's the only thing I could see them doing, is by training camp signing a veteran, versatile backup who's played multiple positions. Because, as you said, if Driscoll wins that left tackle, that right guard job, they're kind of out of luck. You don't want to keep moving everybody. You'd rather have someone who's done it before.
Yeah, but altogether, man, like you just said, this offense is set. You don't really need to add much. It's ready to go. Just may the best men win at all the spots that are open for spots, and that's going to be fun this summer at training camp. All right, next episode, defensive depth chart. We'll probably have some more officialized UDFA signings to go through as well. Look forward to doing that. That's going to do it for this edition of Inside the Birds, the leading podcast in Eagles intel. As always, we thank you for flying with us inside the birds.